My experience, welcome home banners are just prelude to disaster. I should have known something was wrong when Tessa insisted on hanging one across our front porch like some suburban Martha Stewart wannabe. My wife, Dr. Tessa Ellery, infectious disease specialist and a parent expert in bringing home more than just medical knowledge from her 3-month humanitarian mission in West Africa. I'm Nick Ellery, 41 years old, ex-Marine turned hospital IT security chief. I fix computers, monitor camera feeds, and occasionally chase down idiots who think stealing medical equipment is a brilliant career move. It's honest work that pays the bills and keeps me close enough to Riverside General to grab lunch with my wife between her saving lives and my preventing digital catastrophes. Or at least, that's how things used to work. The banner fluttered in the October wind as I pulled into our driveway, groceries for Tessa's welcome home dinner weighing down my arms. Maddie, our 15-year-old daughter, had inherited her mother's sharp tongue and my suspicious nature. She stood in the doorway, arms crossed. Dad, Mom looks terrible, like really terrible. She just spent 3 months in rural Guinea treating Ebola patients, kiddo. Cut her some slack. Will, our 13-year-old son, appeared behind his sister, clutching his Nintendo Switch like a security blanket. She's been throwing up all morning, and she keeps checking her phone every 5 seconds. Kids notice everything. It's both blessing and curse. I found Tessa in our bedroom, sitting on the edge of our king-size bed with her head in her hands. Even sick, she was beautiful. Auburn hair pulled back in a messy bun, green eyes that could stop traffic, and the kind of smile that had convinced me to propose after 6 months of dating. Today, though, she looked like she'd been hit by a medical textbook. Hey, gorgeous, rough flight? She looked up, and for just a second, I saw something in her eyes I'd never seen before. Fear? Guilt? Before I could process it, she was in my arms, sobbing against my chest. Nick, I need to tell you something. I think I might have been exposed to something in Guinea. I'm having symptoms. A chill ran through me. Ebola, Marburg, a dozen other hemorrhagic fevers that could end you in days. What kind of symptoms? Fever, nausea, fatigue, and... She pulled back, unable to meet my eyes. Some other things. I need to go to the hospital. Tonight. I called in every favor I had to get Tessa seen immediately at Riverside General. Dr. Patricia Hendricks, head of emergency medicine and one of Tessa's closest colleagues, took charge personally. Within an hour, Tessa was in isolation while they ran a battery of tests. Nick, try not to panic, Dr. Hendricks said, finding me pacing in the family waiting area. Her symptoms could be anything. Stress, exhaustion, a simple virus. But doctors don't isolate patients for simple viruses. I spent the night in that waiting room drinking terrible coffee and watching CNN repeat the same stories. Maddie and Will stayed with my sister, probably wondering if their mother was going to die from some exotic African disease. At 6 a.m., Dr. Hendricks found me again. Her expression was unreadable. Nick, we need to talk. Privately. She led me to a small consultation room that smelled like disinfectant and broken dreams. The kind of room where doctors deliver life-changing news. The good news is Tessa doesn't have Ebola or any hemorrhagic fever. The bad news is more complicated. How complicated? She has chlamydia and gonorrhea. The words hit me like a physical blow. For a moment, I couldn't process what she'd said. Then reality crashed down like a building collapse. That's impossible. We've been faithful. I've been faithful. Dr. Hendricks' expression was professionally sympathetic. Nick, I'm sorry, the tests are definitive. These infections were transmitted through intimate contact. My wife of 16 years, mother of my children, had cheated on me. While supposedly saving lives in Africa, she'd been busy destroying our marriage. How long has she had them? Based on the progression, I'd say she was infected within the last 2 to 3 months, right around the time she left for Guinea, or maybe after she got there. Heck, maybe she never even made it to Guinea. I sat in that sterile room for 20 minutes, staring at the motivational poster on the wall. Every day is a new beginning. What a load of crap. When I finally stood up, I felt different, older, angrier. Like someone had reached into my chest and rearranged my organs. I needed answers, and I knew exactly who to call. Mason Greeley looked exactly like what he was, an ex-cop turned private investigator who'd seen too much and drank too little coffee to care about social niceties. His office above Murphy's Tavern smelled like cigarettes and disappointment. But he had a reputation for finding truth in places most people were afraid to look. So, your wife brought back more than malaria medication from her African adventure, Mason said, lighting his 4th cigarette since I'd started talking. You want me to find out who, what, when, and where. I want to know everything, every detail, every lie. That's gonna cost you. Truth usually does. I slid an envelope across his desk. There's 5,000. Find me the truth, and there's 5,000 more. Mason opened the envelope, counted the bills, and smiled. Nick, my friend, you just bought yourself a front row seat to the crap show. While Mason started his investigation, I had to figure out how to handle things at home. Tessa was being treated with antibiotics and would be released in a few days. The kids thought she had some exotic but treatable African virus. I let them keep thinking that. The hardest part was pretending everything was normal. I went to work, monitored security cameras, and fixed network problems while my marriage imploded in slow motion. My colleagues at the hospital treated me with the careful sympathy reserved for family members of patients, not knowing I was actually the victim of a completely different kind of infection. 3 days later, Mason called. Nick, you need to come to my office, and you might want to bring a bottle of something strong. I found Mason surrounded by photographs, computer printouts, and what looked like surveillance equipment. His expression was grim. Your wife never made it to Guinea. What do you mean? I mean, Dr. Tessa Ellery spent exactly 0 days treating Ebola patients in West Africa. She spent 3 months in Portland, Oregon, shacked up with Dr. Owen Grant from the cardiology department. Owen Grant. I knew him. Arrogant, handsome, married with 2 kids. The kind of doctor who wore expensive suits and drove a BMW like it was a medical device. How do you know? Mason slid a stack of photographs across his desk. Hotel receipts, restaurant bills, and pictures that made my stomach turn. Tessa and Owen in restaurants, holding hands across candlelit tables. Tessa and Owen entering hotel rooms. Tessa and Owen doing things that definitely weren't covered by her medical license. There's more, Mason said. Your wife wasn't just having an affair. She was part of something bigger. He showed me printouts of text messages, social media posts, and financial records. Tessa had been involved with a group of medical professionals who organized what they called continuing education retreats. In reality, they were elaborate love parties for doctors, nurses, and other hospital staff. The whole thing was organized by Dr. Alexis Voss from psychiatry. She's been running these parties for 2 years, targeting married professionals looking for excitement. Your wife got recruited about 4 months ago. Dr. Alexis Voss. I knew her too, mid-30s, blonde, with the kind of predatory smile that made smart men do stupid things. She specialized in relationship counseling and had a private practice that catered to Riverside's medical elite. So Tessa didn't just cheat. She joined a cheating club. Gets better or worse, depending on your perspective. The group keeps detailed records. Photos, videos, financial arrangements, insurance, you might say. Mason handed me a flash drive. Everything's on there. Names, dates, locations, financial records. Your wife's been paying membership fees and participating in what they call professional development activities for months. I stared at the flash drive like it was a venomous snake. How many people are involved? 43 medical professionals from 5 different hospitals, including some names that would make front-page news if this got out. I pocketed the drive and stood up. Mason, you've earned your bonus. What are you going to do? I'm going to diagnose the problem and prescribe the appropriate treatment. That evening, I sat in my home office while Tessa slept off her antibiotics upstairs, and the kids watched Netflix in the living room. I opened the flash drive and started reading. What I found made my skin crawl. Tessa hadn't just cheated, she'd been documenting it. Photos of hotel rooms, screenshots of text conversations with other participants, financial records showing she'd spent over $8,000 of our money on her continuing education. But the worst part was reading her messages to Owen and the others. She wrote about me like I was some boring obstacle to her so-called freedom. Nick's so predictable, she'd written. Military guys are all the same. No imagination. No imagination. We'd see about that. I spent the next 2 hours creating a comprehensive dossier. Names, faces, positions at various hospitals, financial records, and enough photographic evidence to destroy careers and marriages across the entire medical community. Then I started making phone calls. Julia Grant answered her phone on the 3rd ring. I'd met Owen's wife at hospital social events. Quiet, intelligent, the kind of woman who noticed everything but said little. Perfect for what I had in mind. Julia, this is Nick Ellery, Tessa's husband. I need to talk to you about something important, something about our spouses. Silence. Then, I was wondering when you'd call. We met at Riverside Park the next morning. Julia brought coffee and a manila folder thick enough to choke a horse. She looked tired but determined, like someone who'd been preparing for war. How long have you known? I asked. 6 months. Owen got sloppy with his phone passwords. She opened her folder and showed me printouts that made Mason's investigation look amateur. I've been documenting everything. Julia had bank statements showing Owen's payments to Dr. Voss's consulting firm, hotel receipts, credit card statements, and photographs that would have made a divorce lawyer weep with joy. Why didn't you confront him? Because I wanted to understand the scope of the problem first, and because I was hoping it would burn itself out. She sipped her coffee and stared across the park. I was wrong. We spent 2 hours comparing notes and building a comprehensive picture of what our spouses had been doing. The continuing education retreats were elaborate affairs held at expensive resorts. Participants paid membership fees, attended workshops on relationship enhancement, and engaged in what the organizers called professional networking. It's not just about closeness, Julia explained. It's about power. These people get off on the secrecy, the risk, the feeling that they're part of something exclusive. How many people know about this? More than you'd think. Hospital gossip travels fast, especially when it involves doctors behaving badly. Half the nursing staff knows something's going on. That gave me an idea. Julia, how would you feel about making this public? You mean exposing them? I mean destroying them. Professionally, socially, financially, making sure everyone knows exactly what kind of people they really are. Julia smiled for the first time since I'd known her. Nick, I think we're going to be great friends. Over the next week, we put together a plan that would have impressed military strategists. Julia handled the financial investigation, tracking money trails and documenting expenses. I used my hospital access to gather intelligence on the participants' professional activities and potential ethics violations. Meanwhile, Tessa came home and tried to pretend nothing had changed. She told the kids elaborate stories about her time in Africa, complete with fake photos she'd downloaded from medical charity websites. She cooked my favorite meals, bought me expensive gifts, and tried to initiate intimacy like we were still a happy couple. I played along. I smiled, said thank you, and acted like the devoted husband she'd betrayed. But inside, I was planning her destruction with the methodical precision I'd learned in the Marines. The breakthrough came when Julia discovered that Dr. Voss had been blackmailing some of the participants. The insurance photos and videos weren't just for fun. They were leverage. Voss had been extorting money from married participants who wanted to leave the group or threatened to expose the operation. She's been draining them financially, Julia said, showing me financial records during one of our coffee meetings. Some people have paid her over $50,000 to keep quiet, including Tessa? Especially Tessa. Your wife has been paying Voss $2,000 a month for the last 4 months. $8,000 of our money, gone. Money we'd been saving for the kids' college funds, for our retirement, for the life we'd been building together for 16 years. That night, I made a decision. It was time to start the war. I began with the hospital administration. Doctor Richard Hartwell, Chief of Staff, was a by-the-book administrator who took ethics violations seriously. I requested a private meeting and presented him with a carefully edited version of my evidence. Dr. Hartwell, I've discovered what I believe to be a serious breach of professional ethics involving multiple staff members. I showed him financial records, photographs, and documentation of the continuing education scam. I was careful to frame it as a concerned employee reporting potential misconduct, not a betrayed husband seeking revenge. Dr. Hartwell's face went through several color changes as he reviewed the evidence. Mr. Ellery, this is extremely serious. If these allegations are accurate, we're looking at potential licensing violations, ethics breaches, and possible criminal activity. I thought you should know before it becomes public knowledge. Public knowledge? Doctor, this involves over 40 medical professionals from multiple hospitals. The story is going to come out eventually. The question is whether Riverside General gets ahead of it or gets buried by it. Within 24 hours, the hospital had launched an internal investigation. Within 48 hours, word had leaked to the nursing staff, the administrative assistants, and the maintenance crews. Hospital gossip networks make the CIA look like amateur hour. By Friday, everyone at Riverside General knew that some of their doctors had been caught in a love scandal. They didn't know all the details yet, but they knew enough to start whispering in break rooms and elevator rides. Tessa came home that evening looking shell-shocked. Nick, there are rumors going around the hospital. Crazy rumors about some kind of investigation. What kind of rumors? Something about doctors being involved in inappropriate activities. Professional misconduct. The administration isn't saying much, but people are talking. I looked up from my newspaper with practiced innocence. Sounds like typical hospital drama. You know how people gossip. But what if it affects me? What if people think I'm involved somehow? Honey, you've been in Africa for 3 months treating Ebola patients. How could you possibly be involved in hospital gossip? She stared at me for a long moment, and I saw recognition flickering in her eyes. She was starting to realize that her carefully constructed lies were about to collapse. Nick, we need to talk. About what? About us? About our marriage? About some things I need to tell you? I folded my newspaper and gave her my full attention. I'm listening. But before she could speak, my phone buzzed with a text from Julia. Owen's been suspended pending investigation. It's starting. I smiled at my wife. Sorry, honey, what were you saying? The Riverside General Hospital annual gala was scheduled for the following Saturday. 500 of the city's medical elite gathering at the Riverside Convention Center to celebrate another year of healing, innovation, and professional excellence. Under normal circumstances, Tessa and I would have attended together, smiled for photos, and made small talk about medical advances and hospital politics. These weren't normal circumstances. I don't think we should go, Tessa said, pacing around our bedroom while I adjusted my tie. With all the rumors and the investigation, it might be better to keep a low profile. Nonsense. You're one of the hospital's most respected doctors. Hiding would just make people think you have something to be ashamed of. The truth was, I wanted her there. I wanted all of them there. Because tonight was going to be the night everything came out. Julia and I had spent the week preparing. We'd leaked carefully selected information to key hospital staff members, ensuring that rumors would be flying by the time the gala started. We'd also prepared a special presentation that would be hard to ignore. The convention center was decorated in Riverside General's colors blue and silver streamers, elegant table settings, and a stage where Dr. Hartwell would deliver his annual address. I spotted Owen Grant immediately. He looked nervous, constantly checking his phone and avoiding eye contact with other attendees. Dr. Alexis Voss was harder to find, but I eventually spotted her at the bar, surrounded by a small group of participants from her continuing education program. They were huddled together, like conspirators, which, I suppose, they were. Nick, Doctor. Patricia Hendricks approached with a warm smile. Good to see you here. How's Tessa adjusting to being back? She's doing well, still recovering from her African adventure. Dr. Hendricks's smile faltered slightly. Yes, well, I'm sure the transition has been challenging. Interesting. Word was spreading faster than I'd anticipated. I made my way through the crowd, shaking hands and making small talk while keeping track of the key players. Tessa was across the room, talking animatedly with a group of nurses who looked distinctly uncomfortable. Owen was still by himself, nursing what looked like his fourth drink of the evening. At 8 o'clock, Dr. Hartwell took the stage to deliver his annual address. He talked about medical excellence, professional integrity, and the importance of maintaining public trust in healthcare institutions. The irony was thick enough to cut with a scalpel. This year has brought challenges and opportunities, Dr. Hartwell said, his voice carrying across the crowded ballroom. We've been reminded that our profession demands the highest standards of ethical conduct, both in our medical practice and in our personal lives. Murmurs rippled through the audience. Everyone knew something was coming. Which is why I'm announcing tonight that Riverside General will be implementing new policies regarding professional conduct and continuing education programs. We will be reviewing all external educational activities to ensure they meet our standards for professional development. The murmurs grew louder. At a table near the front, I saw Dr. Voss go pale. But Dr. Hartwell wasn't finished. We will also be conducting a comprehensive review of any staff members who may have participated in activities that compromise their professional integrity or violate our code of ethics. Now the murmurs became actual conversations. People were looking around the room, trying to identify who might be involved in whatever scandal was brewing. That's when I made my move. I stood up and walked to the microphone that had been set up for audience questions. Dr. Hartwell looked surprised, but nodded for me to proceed. Thank you, Dr. Hartwell. I'm Nick Ellery from ID Security. I have a question about the professional conduct review you mentioned. Yes, Mr. Ellery? I'm wondering if this review will include staff members who have been participating in what they call continuing education retreats that are actually elaborate love parties funded by membership fees and organized by Dr. Alexis Voss? The silence that followed was deafening. 500 people stopped breathing simultaneously. Dr. Hartwell's face went through several color changes. Mr. Ellery, this is not the appropriate forum for— Actually, doctor, I think it's the perfect forum, because I have documentation showing that over 40 staff members from multiple hospitals have been participating in these activities, including financial records, photographs, and evidence of blackmail. The room erupted. People were standing, shouting questions, pulling out phones to record what was happening. I saw Tessa across the room, her face white with shock and horror. Furthermore, I continued, my voice carrying over the chaos, I have evidence that some participants, including my own wife, Dr. Tessa Ellery, have been lying about their professional activities. Dr. Ellery claimed to be treating Ebola patients in West Africa when she was actually participating in these love parties in Portland, Oregon. That's when Owen Grant lost it. He pushed through the crowd toward the stage, his face red with rage and alcohol. You son of a witch! You have no right to— I have every right, I said, stepping down from the microphone to meet him. I have the right to expose liars, cheaters, and blackmailers. I have the right to protect my children from parents who think marriage vows are just suggestions. Owen swung at me. I'd been expecting it. I ducked his clumsy punch and grabbed his wrist, using his momentum to spin him around and pin his arm behind his back. 16 years of marriage hadn't made me forget my military training. Ladies and gentlemen, I announced to the crowd of shocked onlookers, meet Dr. Owen Grant, cardiologist and homewrecker. He's been having an affair with my wife for the last 4 months while his own wife has been taking care of their children. I released Owen, who stumbled and nearly fell. He looked around the room at hundreds of people staring at him with disgust and fascination. This is insane, he stammered. You're insane. Tessa, tell them this is crazy. But Tessa was already gone. I saw her pushing through the crowd toward the exit, desperate to escape the humiliation. Dr. Voss tried to follow her, but Julia Grant stepped into her path. Dr. Voss, Julia said, her voice carrying clearly through the room, I believe you have something that belongs to my husband and me. About $50,000 worth of something. The crowd was eating this up. Medical professionals love drama as much as anyone else, especially when it involves colleagues they've always suspected of being corrupt. Security guards were moving toward the stage, but Dr. Hartwell waved them off. He stepped back to the microphone. Ladies and gentlemen, I think it's best if we end this evening's festivities. Thank you for your attendance, and please drive safely. As people began filing out, I found myself surrounded by hospital staff, asking questions, offering support, and sharing their own suspicions about the participants in Dr. Voss's program. Nick, Dr. Patricia Hendricks said, pulling me aside, I had no idea about any of this, about Tessa, about the affairs, about the lies. Most people didn't. That was the point. What are you going to do now? I looked around the emptying ballroom, at the shocked faces and whispered conversations that would fuel hospital gossip for months to come. Now I'm going to finish what I started. The story hit social media before I even got home from the gala. Someone had recorded my speech and Owen's meltdown, and within hours, Riverside scandal was trending locally. By Sunday morning, the local news stations were calling it Medgate and running stories about corruption in the city's medical community. I found Tessa sitting at our kitchen table, still wearing her gala dress, staring at her phone with tears streaming down her face. Nick, please, we need to talk about this rationally. Rationally? You want to discuss rational behavior? I poured myself coffee and sat across from her. Let's start with the rational decision to lie about treating Ebola patients while you were actually screwing your colleague in Portland hotel rooms. It wasn't supposed to happen like this. It was just supposed to be a break, a chance to figure things out. Figure what out, Tessa? How to spend $8,000 of our kids' college money on membership fees for a love club? She looked genuinely shocked. How do you know about the money? I know about everything. The payments to Alexis Voss, the blackmail, the photographs, the videos, all of it. I slid a manila folder across the table. Your boyfriend Owen has been suspended pending investigation. Dr. Voss is facing criminal charges for extortion, and you're about to lose your medical license for ethics violations. Tessa opened the folder and saw copies of all the evidence I'd gathered. Financial records, photographs, text messages, hotel receipts. Her entire secret life laid out in black and white. You hired a private investigator? I hired a professional to find the truth, something you seem to have forgotten how to do. Nick, I know you're angry, but think about the kids. Think about our family. I am thinking about the kids. I'm thinking about how they deserve better than a mother who lies to their faces about saving African children while she's actually destroying her own family. That's when Maddie appeared in the kitchen doorway, still in her pajamas. Dad? Mom? What's going on? Why are there news vans outside? Tessa and I looked at each other. In all our planning for mutual destruction, we'd somehow forgotten that our children would be caught in the crossfire. Sit down, honey, I said. We need to explain some things. The next hour was the hardest of my life. Explaining to your 15-year-old daughter and 13-year-old son that their mother had been living a lie for months, that their parents' marriage was over, and that their family was about to become local news was not covered in any parenting manual I'd ever read. Maddie took it better than Will. She'd inherited enough of my suspicious nature to have sensed something was wrong. Will just sat there, clutching his Nintendo Switch, trying to process information that would have challenged adults. So Mom didn't really help sick people in Africa? Will asked. No, buddy, she didn't. And you and Mom are getting divorced? Yes. And everyone's going to know about it because it's on the news? Probably. Will nodded slowly. This sucks. Yeah, it really does. Tessa tried to explain herself, to justify her actions, to minimize the damage. But the kids weren't stupid. They understood betrayal, even if they didn't understand the adult complications that had led to it. By Monday morning, the story had exploded beyond local news. Medical ethics scandals involving love parties and blackmail were apparently irresistible to national media outlets. CNN ran a segment about professional misconduct in healthcare. Fox News called it medical malpractice of the heart. The hospital was fielding calls from reporters across the country. I took a week off work to deal with lawyers, reporters, and the general chaos that comes with accidentally becoming the center of a national news story. My phone rang constantly with interview requests, book deal offers, and calls from other betrayed spouses who wanted advice on exposing cheating partners. The legal proceedings moved faster than I'd expected. Tessa hired an expensive divorce attorney who specialized in high-profile cases, but the evidence against her was overwhelming. Julia and I had documented everything so thoroughly that there was no room for denial or negotiation. Mr. Ellery, my attorney Lisa Chang explained during one of our meetings, your wife's legal team is trying to argue that the evidence was obtained illegally. They're claiming invasion of privacy. Everything we found was either public record or provided by willing participants. Nothing was hacked, stolen, or obtained through illegal surveillance. That's what I told them. They're also trying to argue that exposing the affair publicly constitutes emotional distress and defamation. She defamed herself by lying about treating Ebola patients. I just provided photographic evidence that she was lying. The custody battle was more complicated. Tessa's lawyers argued that despite her personal failings, she was still a competent mother who deserved joint custody. My lawyers argued that someone who could lie to her children's faces for months about her professional activities couldn't be trusted with their emotional well-being. The kids made the decision easier by refusing to stay at Tessa's apartment. Maddie was old enough to choose where she wanted to live, and Will followed his sister's lead. They were angry, hurt, and felt betrayed by their mother's lies. I don't want to see her, Maddie told the family court counselor. She lied to us about everything. How do we know she won't lie about other things? Meanwhile, the professional consequences were piling up. Dr. Voss was arrested on extortion charges. Owen Grant was fired from his position and faced medical board hearings that would likely end his career. Tessa was suspended pending investigation and faced similar professional consequences. The continuing education scandal had exposed corruption at multiple hospitals. Medical boards across the state were reviewing the licenses of everyone involved. Several participants had already resigned rather than face professional discipline. But I wasn't finished yet. 3 months after the gala, I was sitting in my lawyer's office reviewing the final divorce settlement when Lisa Chang handed me an envelope that had been delivered by courier. It's from Tessa's attorney. She wants to meet with you privately. What for? She didn't say, but I suspect she's going to try one last manipulation to salvage something from this disaster. I found Tessa waiting at Riverside Park, the same place where Julia and I had first planned our campaign of mutual destruction. She looked terrible, thin, pale, and wearing clothes that suggested her financial situation had deteriorated significantly. Nick, thank you for coming. What do you want, Tessa? I want to apologize. Really apologize, not just lawyer speak. I want you to know that I understand what I did to you, to the kids, to our family. Okay, you're sorry. Is that it? I'm also scared. The medical board is going to revoke my license. I'll never practice medicine again. I've lost everything. My career, my family, my reputation, I have nothing left. I studied her face, looking for signs of manipulation or deception, but she just looked broken. You made your choices, Tessa. Actions have consequences. I know, but I need you to know that I never meant for it to go this far. It started as just excitement, something different. Alexis made it seem sophisticated, like we were exploring personal growth through adultery and lying to your children. I know how it sounds. I know how it looks. But I was drowning, Nick. I felt trapped in our routine, in our life. I felt invisible. So you decided to become visible by joining a love club and lying about treating dying children in Africa. She flinched. When you put it like that, it sounds monstrous. It was monstrous. We sat in silence for several minutes, watching joggers and dog walkers enjoy the spring afternoon, normal people living normal lives without scandal and betrayal. What happens now? She asked. Now you live with the consequences of your choices. You find a new career, maybe in a different city where people don't know your story. You try to rebuild some kind of relationship with your children if they'll let you. And you learn to live with the fact that you destroyed a 16-year marriage for a few months of excitement. And you? What happens to you? I thought about that question. What did happen to me now? The revenge was complete. Tessa had lost her career, her reputation, and her family. Owen Grant was facing similar consequences. Dr. Voss was facing criminal charges. Everyone involved in the scandal had been exposed and punished. But revenge, I was discovering, was like surgery. It could remove the diseased tissue, but it couldn't heal the underlying wound. I'm going to focus on raising our kids and helping them understand that their mother's choices don't reflect on them. I'm going to continue my career and maybe write a book about this whole experience. And eventually, I'm going to try to find someone who understands that marriage vows actually mean something. Tessa started crying. I loved you, Nick. I really did love you. Maybe you did. But love without respect, without honesty, without commitment, isn't really love. It's just convenience with emotions attached. I stood up to leave, then turned back. Tessa, I want you to know that I don't hate you. I'm not even angry anymore. I'm just disappointed. You had everything. A career you loved, children who adored you, a husband who would have done anything for you. And you threw it all away for something that wasn't even real. It felt real at the time. That's the problem. You confused feeling with reality. You confused excitement with happiness. You confused secrecy with sophistication. And now you get to live with the reality of those confusions. I walked away from her sitting alone on that park bench, crying over the wreckage of a life she destroyed through her own choices. The divorce was finalized 2 weeks later. I got the house, primary custody of the kids, and most of our assets. Tessa got a small settlement and supervised visitation rights that she rarely exercised. 6 months after the gala, I was helping Maddie with her college applications when she asked the question I'd been dreading. Dad, do you think Mom will ever be normal again? I don't know, honey. I hope so. I hope she learns from this and finds a way to be happy without hurting other people. Do you think you'll ever get married again? Maybe someday, but not until I'm sure I can trust someone completely, and not until you and Will are ready for that kind of change in our family. What if we're never ready? I laughed. Then I guess I'll be a very dedicated single father. Will looked up from his video game. Dad, would you ever lie to us the way Mom did? No, buddy. I promise you that I will never lie to you about anything important. If you ask me a question, you'll get an honest answer, even if it's not the answer you want to hear. Even if the truth sucks. Especially if the truth sucks, because lies always make everything worse in the end. That evening, after the kids were in bed, I sat in my home office reviewing the final documents from the divorce proceedings. Everything was settled. The revenge was complete. Justice, such as it was, had been served. But as I looked around the house where we'd raised our children, where we'd celebrated birthdays and holidays, where we'd built what I thought was a life together, I realized that revenge was a hollow victory. I destroyed the people who had betrayed me, but I couldn't rebuild what they'd taken from me. I couldn't restore the trust, the innocence, the belief that the people you love will always choose to protect rather than destroy what you've built together. The scandal had made me locally famous. Reporters still called occasionally asking for updates on the Medgate story. I'd been invited to speak at conferences about workplace ethics and the importance of professional integrity. A publisher had offered me a book deal to tell my story in detail, but fame built on personal destruction felt empty. I'd won the war, but I'd lost something essential in the process. The ability to trust completely, to love without reservation, to believe that people are fundamentally good. Maybe that was the real cost of revenge. Not just the destruction of your enemies, but the hardening of your own heart against future vulnerability. Or maybe that was just the price of growing up, of learning that the world is more complicated and cruel than you'd wanted to believe. Either way, it was over. Tessa had moved to another state to start over. Owen Grant had lost his medical license and was working as a pharmaceutical sales representative. Dr. Voss was serving 18 months in federal prison for extortion and mail fraud. The kids were doing well in therapy, learning to process their anger and disappointment in healthy ways. Maddie had been accepted to 3 colleges and was planning to study journalism. Will had joined the robotics club at school and was talking about becoming an engineer. Life was moving forward, as life always does, carrying the scars, but not the open wounds of betrayal and revenge. I closed the file folder containing the last of the legal documents and put it in my desk drawer. Then I walked upstairs to check on my children, the 2 people in the world who mattered more than any marriage, any career, any revenge. They were both asleep, safe in their beds, dreaming of futures that wouldn't be defined by their parents' failures. That was enough. That was everything.